everyone, and welcome to the Kath podcast. And today I'm going to be talking about the Jesus movement, the New Age movement, which was also happening at the same time, and Occupy Wall Street, and how I think the two movements back in the 60s, 70s is very similar to the Occupy Wall Street movement. So the Jesus movement was an evangelical Christian movement that began in the west coast of the United States in the late 1960s and early 1970s and spread throughout North America, Europe, Central America, Australia and New Zealand before subsiding in the late 80s. Well, first of all, I don't believe with that kind of spread, when it's stemming from the west coast of America, that kind of spread does not subside in the 1980s. That continues. The predecessor was the charismatic movement, had already been in full swing for a decade. So there's two different movements within the Christian groups, which have had sort of a decade of training, indoctrinating, educating, and probably brought about new leaders within those groups. So they are, that's very interesting anyway. The charismatic movement involved mainline Protestants and Roman Catholics who testified to having supernatural experiences similar to those. Oh, right, okay, so that's interesting because the supernatural is something that the New Age has. They believe in, that they are gifted and possibly angels and things like that. So that's very New Age, both of that. The Jesus movement left a legacy that included the formation of various denominations. So there we go. That's right. They've been training up leaders for the new Christian world. And they influenced the Christian right and the Christian left. And then they brought about Christian media, radio and film industry. So that happened all in 10 years, and that happened in the 60s. That's had intense and immense influence on where the church is headed right now. That's very interesting. Growth and decline, secular and Christian media exposure in 1970s caused the Jesus movement to explode, attracting evangelical youth eager to identify with the movement. So there's a lot of kids who want to identify with something because they're feeling lost. And that is known by people with money and influence and power. Legacy. Although the Jesus movement lasted no longer than a decade, its influence on Christian culture can still be seen. Yeah, I bet it can be. It seems to me like the Jesus movement probably started off with people who were feeling lost and a bit confused, questioning the church maybe, and not really identifying with the church. And then, maybe like a grassroots movement started where people were talking about this inability to be able to understand what they were reading in the Bible, and maybe they started organising, and then people needed to put a stop to that. Powerful people. That's what I would say happens regularly. It's what happened with Occupy Wall Street. It was a sincere grassroots movement, but it was taken over. And then where did that lead us? It led us to the invention of blockchain and the building of cryptocurrency. So some people may even say that it wasn't a genuine movement at the beginning. It was always orchestrated so as to bring in cryptocurrency and blockchain, which is a fair point if they do say that. Jesus' people had a strong belief in miracles, signs and wonders, faith and healing. Okay, well, I would say that that's pretty much how I think that Christians are very spiritual. I suppose it depends on the interpretation of all of that, because that could also be very New Age in its if it's sort of led in that way. The Jesus Army. In the UK, the Jesus Army, also known as the Jesus Fellowship Church, was among the groups most influenced by the Jesus movement, embracing former hippies, bikers, drug addicts, among others. So that would be inviting in all your abandoned New Agers, maybe. I don't know. But I do think that the hippies from the 60s, from what I've seen, could be quite full on. Okay, so that's the Jesus movement, which has influence today. It's it also has sort of a millennial outlook to it, from my understanding. Yeah, millennialism. So is a belief which is advanced by some religious denominations. A golden age will occur, or a paradise will be established on earth prior to the last judgment. That's presumably the last judgment by God in Revelation. But what happens before the judgment is Satan's season. So it seems strange that they would believe and practice the idea that there'd be a golden age before the judgment, because the golden age is Satan's season. So you have Jesus' return and have a millennial kingdom. Then following that is Satan's season before the last judgment. So it's interesting that they call and describe Satan's season as a golden age. That's mind-bending when it's coming from Christianity, especially when you read Revelation 20. Yeah, Christianity. Weird. Yeah, so New Age, channeling, alternative medicine. I mean, I don't think that that's such a bad thing. Religion. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that it started in the 1970s. It has elements of this Jesus movement within it, and it's interesting that the Jesus movement mentions left and right, so it was actually a political movement, not a Christian movement. And I would imagine that the New Age movement was probably more focused towards left-wing, in those people who were more left-leaning in their politics. The New Age and its message began editing a weekly journal of Christian liberalism and socialism titled The New Age. The concept of a coming new age that would be inaugurated by the return to earth of Jesus. Now, isn't that interesting? That the New Age saw the return of Jesus, and the Jesus movement saw a millennial golden paradise before judgment, when that's not what it says in the Bible. Oh, yeah. Carl Jung frequently wrote of the new eon, denoting the shift from the Platonic month of Pisces to that of Aquarius. Yeah, I've heard. I didn't know who Carl Jung was until I was, I think in 2015 or 16. Then suddenly, Jordan Peterson was sort of being recommended, and Carl Jung was a hot topic for him. Between the 30s and the 60s, a small number of groups of individuals became preoccupied with the concept of a coming new age and used the term accordingly. The term had thus become a recurring motif in the esoteric spirituality. Right. Okay, so there's definitely... So what I would say is that these movements are very, very similar, but they are designed to please certain political mindsets in people. Occupy Wall Street is identified by by Wikipedia as a left-wing populist movement, which it may well have been. Again, it only repeats left wing, it doesn't say right wing, but I came across it through right wing, so they're sort of it's interesting how they sort of merge this and write about this. It's almost as if they are identifying the right wing people as left wing because of Occupy Wall Street, and it seems to be the same thing here. They've probably got past that point of identifying them as left and right. They just are now all left wing if they have these different ideas and concepts. And the reason why I'm sort of curious about all of this is because I'm seeing an emerging set of people arrive on the alternative media, just sort of coming and establishing themselves out of the blue, out of nowhere, and I'm finding that to be really interesting to observe, because what I also notice is that as people watch these creators, they become sort of emotionally attached and idolizing them, and if you were to criticize them, you know, you'd face a real, you know, lashback. And I find that psychology really interesting to write about. I find it really a fascinating thing for my fiction writing, because does it keep people stood still, or do people move forward and say, yeah, well, I don't care what you're going to call me, I'm going to call out this person? Or will they start to say, oh no, okay, this person is a good person? Because it's easier to do that. And we know that from the last few years, a lot of people have gone with the flow and just sort of bowed down to the pressure of what's going on in society. So I do feel that these Jesus movements and the New Age movement and the Occupy Wall Street movements, I feel that these are directed towards the more hard-headed, stubborn, single-minded individuals like myself, who, and probably those listening, who do not cave easily to pressure, if at all. So I do think that these are orchestrated movements. What's even more interesting is the Jesus Movement movie came out just before, I guess, the pandemic time, or after, was it? Oh, it's was released in 2019. Yeah, that's an interesting time, because it's almost as if it was intended to distract again and bring about hope, as deceit was just sort of being woven into their societal view of things. So yeah, I mean, I don't have much more to say about it. I'm just sort of these sorts of things fascinate me because I think they make for great plot lines. And I think it's important to write fiction. Let's see what certain people say about fiction now. World Economic Forum: this is why reading fiction is as important now as it ever was. And I would agree with that. I think that it is important. However, it also means that they're writing the fiction, which is surprising link between science fiction and economic history. I've just been talking about their Occupy Wall Street. Yeah, so I think that these groups of people, WEF and UN and stuff, they know the importance of writing fiction, because they can get their ideas out without causing too much alarm. And similarly, we can get our concerns out in a politically correct way, because you've got to explore characters, you've got to explore characteristics, personalities, all sorts of things when you write fiction. It's very important. I think it's very important for development. And yeah, I would also add that I do believe that writing can improve your mental health. I won't be looking through all of these, but I just wanted to see what their view of fiction writing is. But I do know that they are involved in, some fictions which are working their way through, probably schools and all sorts of areas. So, anyway, this is what I thought I would talk about. What are your thoughts on the Jesus movement, how it's left its influence, and what did you think about the idea that they explain to do with the millennialism, that it's a paradise prior to the judgment? How do you interpret that as a Christian? Because I find that really, honestly, truly very bizarre, because Satan has his season before the Last Judgment. So why would they refer to that as a golden age? Interesting. Well, thank you for joining me. Please put a thumbs up and like if you like my talks. Please subscribe if you're interested, and comment if you have anything that you want to say about what I've said. Thank you. Bye.